Hi, I'm Chris Frame and welcome back to my channel. In March of 2020, the cruise lines and cruise ships around the world found themselves in the unprecedented situation of having to enact a global cruising shutdown. Some ships were able to return to their home ports, completing their latest cruise voyage and disembarking the passengers where they expected to leave the ship to undertake their planned onward journeys back home. But others were far from home ports and had to disembark their passengers in ports around the world and organise with the passengers to arrange for flights back to their home ports. For ships undertaking world cruises or long-duration voyages far from their home ports, cruise lines had to make hasty decisions in order to bring their ships into safe harbour and disembark passengers in unplanned locations. This also led to shipping lines and passengers needing to make new arrangements to get people home. This phase of the cruise pause took place throughout late March and early April. Simultaneously, lines cancelled future bookings, first for up to 60 days, but in the week since, the pause has been extended, depending on the cruise line and cruise ships, with some lines not expecting to recommence voyages until at least September. I've covered these events in past videos, which I have linked in the description and the info card if you'd like to watch these for context. Once the passengers were safely disembarked, the cruise lines had the unenviable job of having to work out how to lay up around about 300 cruise ships. The term laid up means that a ship is out of service. Historically, this was referred to as in ordinary. It can refer to a new ship that is being launched and then stored until it is required, or an operational ship that is withdrawn from service and stored for future use. Or in today's context, the global fleet of cruise ships which are laid up in harbours around the world. These ships are largely inactive and awaiting a resumption of cruising duties. Cruise lines have several options when working out how to lay up their ships. There is the warm layup or a cold layup. But what is the difference between these two types of layup? And why are most of the 300 cruise ships that were in operation before the cruising pause in a state of warm layup? Warm layup, otherwise known as hot layup, is when an operational ship is withdrawn from service, usually temporarily, yet is maintained in a largely static but operational state. Ships in warm layup operate using their own engines, largely independently of shoreside services. There are some exceptions, of course, including food, beverage, medical supplies, fuel and the like, but otherwise they operate as an individual unit. They largely remain independent of land-based infrastructure throughout their time in layup. Their engines provide power to maintain onboard services, including hotel services, air conditioning, water treatment, desalination, and propulsion. The uncertainty surrounding COVID-19 and when the cruising pause might end has helped contribute towards the global fleet of cruise ships entering into this state of warm layup. Let's take the huge cluster of ships in Manila Bay, for example. You can easily find them on marine tracker software, but it includes vessels from Cunard, P&O Australia, Princess Cruises, Carnival Australia, AIDA, and Holland America, to name just a few of the different brands that have put their ships up there. All of these ships remain in an operational state and are powered by their own engines. These ships are fully independent of shoreside power, reliant on the Philippines only for food supply as well as goodwill. The Philippines has, after all, granted them safe harbour in their territorial waters. Keen observers will notice that these cruise ships often weigh anchor and head out to open sea. This activity is undertaken precisely because these ships are in warm layup. As these are operational ships, they need to head further offshore to acquire seawater for desalination, as well as discharge treated grey water, which, although as clean as shoreside treated water, must only be discharged a certain distance from land, depending on the laws governing the region where the ship is based. Ships can be in warm layup without having to go to sea. The QE2 is a good example. She retired in 2008 after a career with Cunard Line, when she was sold to become a floating hotel in Dubai. But whilst the ship was in Dubai awaiting her conversion, she remained in warm layup. QE2's engines generated power to keep the ship operational. Yet services such as grey water removal and fresh water supply were provided by shoreside. You may look at the large clusters of ships around the world, off the Philippines, Barbados, Grand Bahama and Weymouth in the UK, as well as other locations, and wonder why they don't just dock and shut down. Surely that would be more efficient and cheaper. This is a fair question, and one that some of you have posted in comments on my other videos. Shutting down a ship in this way is what's known as cold layup. This is when a ship is deactivated and moored or anchored. When a ship enters cold layup, its engines are shut down. This has the primary benefit of reducing the ongoing fuel costs. However, it comes with a catch. With the engines deactivated, all of the onboard services that rely on power need to have that power supplied by alternative shoreside methods, or be mothballed. If shoreside power is required, the ship will need berthing space, which can often be an expensive proposition. And with hundreds of ships inactive due to the cruising pause, finding berthing space can be quite difficult, which is why we see so many ships currently at anchor. But what about cold layup with a ship at anchor? Well, if shoreside power is not going to be used, then many of the services on board the ship need to be switched off, as the ship will need to be operating on a minimal backup power system to maintain safety systems such as fire suppression and emergency lighting. This means everything else needs to be turned off, emptied and cleaned. This includes all hotel services, which is a bigger job than you might think. It requires all of the pipes on board the ship to be depressurized and emptied, water treatment deactivated, sewage tanks emptied, and on the other end of the spectrum, food stores need to be removed. Anything requiring ongoing maintenance would need to be mothballed and preserved for future use. Depending on the climate where the ship is being laid up, it could get very hot and humid on board, or cold and damp, both of which might cause corrosion on board the ship. This could result in artworks and furnishings needing to be removed. With the uncertainty around how long the cruise pause is going to last, along with the cost and the time required to both put a ship into cold layup as well as reactivate it afterwards, warm layup has been the option that's been chosen for most of the world's cruise ships. It just doesn't make financial sense for the ships to be in cold layup at this point. There is another option. It's only available for some cruise ships, but it's known as cold ironing. This means a ship is berthed and receives power from shoreside to allow it to maintain operational status, while not using its own engines. This can work well for some smaller cruise ships with a lower energy requirement, with some ships having been specially built to accommodate shoreside power. Hapag-Lloyd's Europa 2 is one such example. She's currently in layup using cold ironing in the port of Hamburg, and the power that's being used to generate the electricity on board the ship comes from renewable sources, which greatly reduces her carbon footprint. I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it interesting and now can understand why so many of the world's cruise ships are still in an operational state in warm layup around the world. If you did enjoy the video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. If you're interested in maritime history, why not check out my maritime history playlist? Or if you want to know what else has been going on during the cruise pause, check out my cruise news playlist. Thanks so much for watching, and when we are able to cruise again, I hope to see you on board.